Good morning, everyone. Gosh, it's filled up since we got here at 9 o'clock, hasn't it? Anyway, I'd just like to thank you all for the invitation to speak today about the life-changing work of Mercy Ships, and also to share a few of my personal experiences of volunteering on board Africa Mercy in Madagascar in 2024. There she is. Founded in 1978, Mercy Ships is an international medical charity that follows the model of Jesus to bring hope and healing to the forgotten poor while helping people of all faiths and none. I first heard about Mercy Ships before I graduated back in 1991, so the seed was planted. Since then, I've listened to a range of speakers, both at local churches and Christian events, watched reports on the television news, and more recently read the book on the history of the ships. In 2018, I applied for the dental team, and in 2020, I was due to go to Sierra Leone when everything closed down. But in 2024, I stepped on board Africa Mercy for the very, very first time. I decided to volunteer because I felt called to put my faith into action. I wanted God to use my skills within this community of faith, and I was ready to say yes to Jesus. So this morning, I'm going to start by showing a short video to give you an overview of the work of Mercy Ships, and follow that up with some more detailed patient stories. Then we'll go through a bit of the patient experience, how they get their treatment, why they get their treatment, the work of the dental team, and finally glimpses into the community life. So, short video.
Mercy Ships is on a mission to bring hope and healing directly to those who need it most. In many nations in sub-Saharan Africa, access to surgical care is limited, unsafe, or unaffordable. 9 out of 10 people in need of surgery are left without hope. And tragically, every 2 seconds, someone dies because of a surgically treatable disease. Mercy Ships exists to change that narrative by bringing safe and free surgical care and surgical education using the world's largest civilian hospital ships, the Global Mercy and the Africa Mercy. On board, volunteer professionals from around the world treat conditions like cleft lips and palates, burn contractures, bowed legs, obstetric fistulas, cataracts, benign tumors, and more. Meanwhile, Mercy Ships partners with African nations to strengthen their surgical systems through education and mentorship, expanding their capacity to deliver quality care in the long term. Over the past 45 years and counting, Mercy Ships has performed more than 114,000 life-changing and life-saving surgical procedures, trained more than 53,600 medical professionals, and gifted services and material valued at over $1.8 billion. Now, with a 2-ship fleet currently active in Madagascar and Sierra Leone, Mercy Ships will be able to double the impact and provide life-transforming surgical care to more people than ever before. And it's about so much more than numbers. Each number represents a name, a face, a story, and a new hope for the future. Because as followers of the 2,000-year-old model of Jesus, we believe everyone deserves the opportunity to live a full and healthy life. Through a global community of partners, donors, and volunteers, together, we can change the surgical landscape in African nations today and in the future.
So there you've seen a few glimpses of a few patients, the crew, the ships, and some of the training programs. I think we saw this young man. This young man, 56. He's got a treatable condition. In the United Kingdom, that's treated before the age of 1. Imagine living with that for 56 years. 2-hour surgery, and 2 weeks later he could return home. I actually met this young man. I took his teeth out. 53. He'd already paid for 3 operations. And operations are expensive. 4-hour surgery. 5 kilograms. And he could go home. He could go back to work. He can provide for his family. Many of us have had children. We want our children to be able to run and play. But these 2 young fellas, their legs just deformed as they grew. They were able to access safe surgery. And now they can get a full education and full independent life. And finally, she was born with this tumor, and the tumor grew as she grew. She was 3 when she was able to access safe surgery. There was no surgeon in her country that could help, and even if there was, the family couldn't afford the surgery. The work is miraculous. These are all ordinary people with the misfortune of living in places which lack safe, affordable, timely surgery and health care. Mercy Ships is actively changing lives through their surgical program. And they also run projects to strengthen the healthcare in the host nation. This includes education programs such as disease prevention, nutritional improvements, and oral health education, and also mentoring and skills training, where the healthcare workers can learn skills that they can use to serve their own communities. So, what do the ships look like? In past talks, people have said, what do they look like? And just a few facts there for you both. They're not small, but they're not large, but they are full communities. They provide the hospital, they provide homes to the crew. The youngest on board when I was there just turned 1, and there was a gentleman on board serving who'd been on board for more than 35 years. There's a whole big family community feel to it. So let's go to Madagascar. Just off the east coast of Africa. It's the 4th largest island in the world. There we go. 995 miles north to south, 360 miles east to west, with a population of around 29 million. That's where the airport is that you fly into. And that's where the ships docked. 219 miles. Now, some of you know the answer to this one. How long does it take to drive 219 miles? 14-hour journey, and that was on good roads. So think about the people that need the care and how they access care. They take days and days to travel to a healthcare facility. The number of doctors per 10,000 of the population in the UK is 30. Madagascar, there are 2. So we're going to move on to the patient experience. The patients out there are putting their hope, trust, and faith in strangers, and that takes a lot. We start with the field selection days, which happen months before the ship has even arrived in the country. Bit drafty, bit warm, bit dusty. How long are you going to have to wait to be seen? And are you going to be accepted for care? The suitable cases for surgery must be able to be treated and not need long follow-up care after the ship has left, because there is no follow-up care after the ship has gone. The fortunate ones are given a date to attend the surgery on the ship. They're all transported and accommodated in a local hope centre, which is purpose-developed as an accommodation centre for pre- and post-op care. It's a small community where patients who are different and have been ostracised in their communities come together and they lean on one another. They grow together, they gain confidence, they watch other people's journeys. It's a supervised, safe environment for them so that they will be strong and fit for their surgery. For outpatients, Africa Mercy doesn't have an outpatient department within the ship. It's still ashore, whereas Global actually can accommodate it. All the stuff is done on board. So it's just alongside the ship on the dock. It's a typical outpatient team. People receive their special investigations, blood tests, imaging, and alongside that, they see the essential dietitian so that they can have a good nutritional plan that makes them strong and fit for the surgery. Because we want them fit for surgery, to survive the surgery, but also to have a good outcome. Once all those results are gathered together, they develop a surgical plan, and a date is set for admission onto the ward on deck 3, which is a bit weird because it's dark, there's no windows, and it's like nowhere they've ever been before. Surgical day, again, typical operating theatre. Some surgeries are short, like the cataract surgeries, but others go on for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours into the small hours of the next day. And it's a case of back to the wards where the rehab can begin. And as I mentioned, it's dark on board, so once a day in the afternoon, all the inpatients go up onto the deck for fresh air and exercise. And it's one of the favourite times of the day. Once they no longer need to be on the wards, they'll return to the Hope Centre and visit daily for physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language as required. And hopefully, after not very long, they're able to be discharged back home. So, how does this all happen? It happens through the crew. Combination of the volunteer crew coming to the ship from around the world, from anywhere from 2 weeks up to a full lifespan. Those that were on the long placements will often come with their families. And as I said, from 1-year-old was the smallest. And there's a full school education program on board for those that wish to join from the age of preschool up to 18. There's also a substantial day crew who are locally employed. Their primary role is to act as translators, but they also gain skills from the medical teams, or they may be working in the hospitality departments and on the ship's crew in various places. So, oops. It's time to get up and go to work now. Why dental? Dental has 2 main roles on board. Of course, we're there to help the patients, and also we need to maintain the health of the dental crew. And after that, it's dental health education. It's a standard dental practice. The only thing we couldn't do was anything that involved laboratory work. The overall, it's one of the smallest teams on board with 6 volunteers alongside 2 day crew. So the first of the dental surgeries is down on deck 3, adjacent to the hospital. Great place to work. Sometimes over the tannoy it would be time for prayer because people were going through to surgery, and other times it would be playtime. If you weren't working in the onboard surgery, you were down on the dockside. There we go. Shortest commute to work I've ever had. In the evenings, the day crew would head home. There we go. It will work. There we go. The weather wasn't always good. And the volunteer crew would retire on board. Again, it's a full community, everything that you need. Borrow a book from the library, Angie. There's enough there for you. And a range of activities as well. As I mentioned earlier, Mercy Ships was, I've split that one, founded on a community of faith. The chaplains, of whom there are 2 full-time and 12 day crew, can be found at all times of day in all areas of the hospital. There's availability of Bible studies, prayer groups, and I think the highlight of my week was always the Sunday evening worship. As you moved round, it wasn't unusual to hear worship songs because it was that department's day for doing worship and praise. Sundays, a lot of us would go out into town to find a church service. It might have been in French, might have been in Malagasy, and there might have been a translator. But it didn't really matter because it's all the same God, isn't it? I was asked for some small and furry pictures, though. Oh, landscape, more small and furry. There we go. The ship's not always in Madagascar, so there aren't always small and furries. So, if you're interested, what can you do? Of course, although everything is free to the patient, it does cost a lot to run, so we ask for donations. Prayer. Prayer is powerful. There's a range of topics there to be prayed for. And finally, you might like to consider volunteering, or maybe you'd know somebody that might be interested in volunteering. To volunteer, you need to be aged 18 to 79. In good health, that means being able to get up and down stairs and climb into the top bunk. Only 50% of the crew are medical positions. There's a vast range of opportunities there. So, thank you very much. And goodbye. But there's one last thing I'd just like to say. I was told when I was on board that when we leave the Africa Mercy, we go with the Holy Spirit in us to share the miracles that God has shown us in our time serving. Thank you very much for letting me show you these today. Richard said there is time for questions if you had some, or I've also got some literature if anybody was interested, or just general chat, or just message me. Yes. I've got to be in Madagascar on the 21st of June, and I'll be serving 8 weeks. So it currently depends what capacity you're going in. Currently, there are no crew fees. So once you get to the country and you're on board the ship, your food and accommodation is free. That's the current position. Prior to 2020, there was a stipend that you had to pay. And currently there is, I'm going to say, an offer that essential medical roles, they are flying for free. But other than that, you do have to to self-fund, and when you want to go out and about, you've got to self-fund, yeah. Yvonne. No, she's currently in Durban having her own service. So she's having all the electrical checks, the sea safety checks, and various renovations done. Ship's gone to dockyard in Durban. Yes, South Africa for African Mercy, but when they're on the west coast, they go to Tenerife. They've got a long-standing relationship in Tenerife.